The Jimmy Kimmel live stage buzzed with energy as the Hollywood crowd settled in. Clint Eastwood, 95, eased into the guest chair, his weathered face etched with defiance. He was there to promote Last Stand, a gritty film about a rogue cop battling corruption. Its themes were raw, unapologetic. Kimmel, 57, kicked off with his usual charm, tossing light jabs about Eastwood's iconic squint. But then Eastwood spoke, his voice a low growl. Last Stand is about fighting a broken system. Same. Fight I've had my whole life. The room grew heavy with his words. Anti-establishment grit that hit like a punch. Kimmel's smile tightened. Sensing an opening, he fired back. That's bold, Clint, but sounds like a relic raging against a world that's moved on. Bit divisive. No? The insult cut sharp, laughter mingling with gasps. A woman in the front whispered, That's harsh. Eastwood's eyes locked on Kimmel, unwavering. I call out lies, systems crushing folks. That's Last Stand. That's me. His steady voice sparked applause, though unease flickered through the crowd. Kimmel leaned in, wielding his comedic edge like a weapon. Truth's nice, Clint, but your broken system talk. Some say it's just griping, not wisdom. Still think you're the man with no name? The jab at Eastwood's legendary persona drew sharper laughs, but a man muttered, Low blow. Eastwood's jaw clenched, voice dropping lower. Griping? I've seen corruption since Rawhide. My fight's real. Not your punchline. The tension thickened. The stage was no longer just a talk show set. It was a battleground. Kimmel pressed harder, sensing the crowd dividing. Fighting's fine, Clint. But your vibe's a bit divisive for unforgiving cool, isn't it? Eastwood didn't blink. Cool? I've stood for what's right since High Plains Drifter. Your barbs don't rattle me. Applause surged again, louder, though some jeers lingered. Kimmel's grin faltered, but he fired back. Right, Clint, but stirring chaos. Is that your last stand or just old grudges? Eastwood gripped his chair, voice controlled but blazing. Chaos? I expose what's rotten. Last stand is my truth, not your gag. The crowd stirred. A woman shouted, Tell him, Clint! The sharp exchange cracked the polished veneer of the taping. Kimmel, master of late-night provocation, expected to unsettle the legend. But Eastwood, forged by decades of unflinching roles, met him head-on. The stage lights blazed brighter, amplifying the standoff. Eastwood's words, rooted in his Last Stand narrative, ignited Kimmel's insult. But his defiance was shifting the room's energy. Producers offstage exchanged worried glances. What was meant to be banter and laughs was spiraling into a clash of conviction versus wit. Eastwood's unyielding stance threatened to upend the show and force Kimmel to reckon with the weight of his reckless jab. This wasn't just a talk show segment. It was a reckoning. A cinematic titan risked his mythic status with every word, while Kimmel baited a legend at the risk of alienating his audience. The crowd, film fans and comedy buffs alike, leaned in, torn between loyalty to Kimmel's humor and awe at Eastwood's fire. The clash echoed the script of a truth-defying challenge, setting the stage for a confrontation that would redefine legacies and test the limits of live TV. The Jimmy Kimmel live stage crackled with tension. The murmurs swelled as Clint Eastwood's words, Last stands my truth, not your gag, hung in the air, a direct challenge to Kimmel's biting insult. Kimmel's comedic mask slipped as he leaned into the fray, voice laced with mockery. Truth swell, Clint, but your system's rotten line? Some say it's just a tired rant, not Gran Torino grit. The jab landed hard. Laughter spiked sharply, but a man in the crowd hissed, That's unfair. Eastwood remained unbowed, fixing Kimmel with a glare forged by decades of defiance. "Tired. I've seen lies gut lives since a fistful of dollars. My rants have teeth." Kimmel, sensing the crowd divide, refused to relent. "Teeth's one thing, Clint, but your anti-establishment shtick? Bit divisive for Sully's wisdom, don't you think?" Eastwood's hand tightened on the chair, his voice a low burn. "Divisive?" I call out what's broken. "Last stand is my stand, not your skit." Applause erupted, fierce but uneven, cut through by murmurs and boos. A woman in the back shouted, "Keep it real, Clint." The Jimmy Kimmel live set, once a haven of light banter, had become a crucible. The air thick with the weight of their clash. Kimmel, a seasoned provocateur, pushed harder. "Fighting's fine, Clint, but your fire? Some say reckless, not iconic. Regret stirring the pot?" Eastwood's eyes blazed, his response a controlled roar. "Regret? I've fought for truth since High Plains Drifter. Your cheap shots don't faze me." The crowd roared louder, some standing, others jeering, the divide sharpening. Kimmel's grin faltered, but he fired back. "Truth's noble, Clint, but your rants? Don't they just alienate fans who want $1,000,000 baby magic?" The quiff sliced through the room. Gasps rose, a man in a cap muttering, "Too far." Eastwood leaned forward, voice cutting like a blade. "Alienate. I speak for folks crushed by lies. Last stand's their story, not your joke." The raw, unrelenting exchange tore through the taping's polished facade. Kimmel, expecting to rattle the legend, found himself facing a titan whose career from Dirty Harry to Unforgiven was built on unyielding resolve. Eastwood's comments about battling broken systems, tied to Last Stand's rogue cop narrative, had sparked Kimmel's insult. But his defiance now shifted the stage's pulse. Producers offstage whispered urgently, sensing the segment slipping into chaos. The crowd, a mix of film buffs and comedy, fans, leaned in, torn between Kimmel's sharp wit and Eastwood's raw fire. A woman in a scarf clapped fiercely, while another shook her head, murmuring, "He's too intense." Kimmel, undeterred, circled back with a smirk. "Stories are great, Clint, but your crush the system vibe. Some say it's chaos, not courage. Still think you're the hero?" Eastwood's voice dropped, gritty and cold. "Hero? I expose what's rotten. Last stand's my fight, not your stage prop." The retort was a gauntlet thrown down. Applause surged, though jeers persisted, fracturing the set further. The stage lights seemed to burn hotter, amplifying the standoff. Kimmel's insult had ignited a clash no longer about last stand promotion, but conviction itself, Eastwood's unshakable belief against Kimmel's calculated barbs. This wasn't just a talk show segment. It was a proving ground. Eastwood, a cinematic monument, risked his mythic status with every word. Kimmel, goading a legend, risked alienating his crowd. What was meant to be laughs and plugs had turned into a battleground of principle versus provocation, with Eastwood's fierce stand threatening to derail the show and force Kimmel to reckon with the fire he'd stoked. The clash echoed the arc of a truth-defying challenge, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test live TV's limits and redefine the legacy of a man who refused to bend. The Jimmy Kimmel live stage seethed with raw energy. The crowd's roars and jeers churned like a turbulent sea as Eastwood's fierce words, "Last stand's my fight, not your stage prop," sliced through Kimmel's mocking jabs. Kimmel, his composure fraying, had branded Eastwood a relic for tying his film's anti-establishment themes to a lifelong battle against corruption, sparking a fracture in the taping. Now, the 57-year-old host doubled down, voice dripping with scorn. Courage is fine, Clint, but your rotten system rants. Some call them unhinged, not unforgiven wisdom. The insult stung, laughter spiking. But a woman in the crowd hissed, "That's cruel." Eastwood, 95, leaned forward, eyes glowing like embers. Unhinged? I've called out lies since High Plains Drifter. Your barbs don't break me. Sensing the crowd's growing divide, Kimmel pressed harder. His grin thinned, cracking like a fragile mask. Breaking's not the point, Clint. Your fire? It's reckless. Too wild for Gran Torino's grit. Eastwood's voice surged, a controlled blaze. Reckless? I speak for those crushed by corruption. Last stand is their truth, not your skit. Applause erupted, fierce and jagged, mingled with boos. A man shouted from the back, "Stand tall, Clint!" What had been a glossy Jimmy Kimmel live stage for light banter now felt like a tinderbox, heavy with the weight of their confrontation. Kimmel, master of provocation, fired another dart. Truth's noble, Clint, but your rants? Some say they alienate fans who loved Sully's calm. Regret the chaos? Eastwood's jaw clenched, his response a thunderous growl. Regret? I fought for what's right since Fistful of Dollars. Your insults don't shake my core. The crowd erupted, some rising in awe, others jeering, the rift deepening. Kimmel's smirk faded, but he pushed further. Core's great, Clint, but stirring division? Does that fit $1 Million Baby's heart? The quip cut deep. Sharp gasps filled the room. A woman muttered, "He's gone too far." Eastwood's voice became a tempest. Division? I expose what's rotten. Last stand is my stand, and I'll be damned if you mock it. His raw, unfiltered outburst shattered the taping's decorum. The Jimmy Kimmel live stage seemed to tremble. Under its force, caught off guard, Kimmel tried to pivot. Clint, it's just talk. Your passion's clear, but ease up. Eastwood slammed his fist on the chair, cutting him off. Ease up? You call me a relic. Trash my fight. Last stands. Truth, not your game. The crowd surged, some chanting, Clint, while others booed. A man in a cap yelled, He's right. Producers off stage barked warnings, barely audible. Mr. Eastwood, calm down or we'll cut. The set, a crucible of clashing wills, teetered on collapse, lights glaring like spotlights on a duel gone awry. Eastwood's fiery stand, rooted in Last Stand's narrative of a rogue cop defying corruption, had transformed Kimmel's insult into a full-blown confrontation. The 95-year-old icon, forged by decades of unyielding roles, stood like a titan, his words reshaping the stage's dynamic. Kimmel, expecting to unsettle a legend, found himself outmatched, his barbs only fueling Eastwood's resolve. The Jimmy Kimmel live crowd, torn between comedy loyalty and awe at Eastwood's fire, leaned in. A woman in a scarf clapped fiercely. This clash was no longer a film plug. It was a battle of conviction against provocation, Eastwood's unrelenting truth threatening to derail the entire show. This wasn't just a talk show segment. It was a reckoning. Eastwood risked his mythic status with every heated word, while Kimmel, goading a colossus, faced a feud that could fracture his audience. What was meant to be laughs and promotion became a proving ground. Eastwood's outburst pushing the limits of live TV. The confrontation echoed the arc of a truth-defying challenge, setting the stage for chaos that would test both men and redefine the narrative of a legend who refused to yield. The Jimmy Kimmel live stage was a furnace. The crowd's roars and jeers swirled like a storm as Clint Eastwood's thunderous words, "Last stands truth, not your game," shattered the taping's fragile decorum. Kimmel, his provocateur's edge crumbling, faced the 95-year-old icon whose fiery outburst had turned the host's insult into a full-blown war. Rattled, Kimmel strained to pivot, voice tight. Clint, it's just talk. Your passion's real. But let's dial it back. Eastwood slammed his fist on the chair, cutting Kimmel off mid-sentence. His voice erupted like a volcano. Dial back? You trash my fight. Call me unhinged? Last stand's my stand, and I won't sit for this. The crowd erupted, some chanting Clint, while others booed. A woman in the front row gasped, "He's unstoppable." Producers off stage surged forward, their shouts piercing the chaos. "Mr. Eastwood, you're out of line. Calm down or leave." Unbowed, Eastwood rose from his seat, eyes blazing like molten steel. "Out of line? You mock my core. Last stand's about fighting lies, not your jokes." His words were a hurled gauntlet, sparking wild applause even as jeers swelled. The Jimmy Kimmel Live set fractured into chaos. Kimmel, ashen, stammered, "Clint, it's a show, not a rally. Let's talk last stand." Eastwood grabbed his hat, roaring, "You slandered my truth. I'm done." The declaration was raw, final, stunning the crowd. Some stood in awe, a man in a cap yelling, "He's right!" Stage. Lights flared, amplifying the pandemonium. Producers now on the floor barked orders. "Mr. Eastwood, exit now!" Security approached, their presence a grim signal. Eastwood, his resolve a granite wall, strode toward the stage's edge, voice a parting shot. "I said my piece. Spin it how you like." The crowd surged, some applauding fiercely, others heckling. A woman in a scarf shouted, "Don't go, Clint!" Kimmel, frozen behind his desk, watched the legend storm off. The Jimmy Kimmel Live set collapsed into disarray. Cameras swiveled wildly. Crew scrambled to capture the wreckage. The taping was no longer a show. It was a battlefield of principle versus provocation. Eastwood's defiance, rooted in Last Stand's narrative of a rogue cop battling corruption, had turned Kimmel's insult into a public crucible. The 95-year-old titan, forged by decades of unyielding roles from Dirty Harry to Sully, stood as a colossus, his words reshaping the stage's pulse. Kimmel, expecting to unsettle the icon, was outmatched. His barbs only fueled Eastwood's fire. The Jimmy Kimmel Live crowd, split between comedy fans and those awed by Eastwood's stand, teetered on the edge. A man in a jacket clapping fiercely. This clash was no longer about a film plug. It was a test of conviction. Eastwood's unrelenting truth derailed the show, leaving Kimmel to face the chaos he'd ignited. This wasn't a segment gone wrong. It was a seismic rupture. Eastwood risked his mythic status with his eruption, while Kimmel, goading a legend, faced a feud that could scar his show. The taping, meant for banter and promotion, had become a proving ground. Eastwood's exit, a blaze of defiance, threatened to redefine both men. The confrontation echoed a truth-defying challenge, pushing the limits of live TV and setting the stage for fallout that would ripple beyond the studio, testing the weight of conviction in a world of laughs. The Jimmy Kimmel Live stage lay in ruins. The crowd's chants and jeers faded as Clint Eastwood's exit left a void. His parting words, "Spin it how you like," rang like a verdict. Jimmy Kimmel, alone behind his desk, faced a fractured audience, the taping gutted by the 95-year-old icon's fiery stand against Kimmel's insult. Producers dimmed the lights, signaling a commercial break that wouldn't air. Kimmel's voice, hollow, addressed the crowd. "Folks, that was intense. Clint's a legend, but we keep it light here." The quip fell flat. A woman in the crowd hissed, "You pushed him." The Jimmy Kimmel Live set still crackled with tension, bearing the scars of a clash that had spiraled beyond control, leaving everyone shaken. Jimmy Kimmel struggled to handle the fallout from his reckless jab. Eastwood's fire, ignited by Kimmel's relic insult and fueled by Last Stand's anti-establishment themes, resonated deeply with supporters who roared in approval. Man in a cap shouted, "Clint's the real deal." Meanwhile, loyalists to Kimmel's comedic turf booed, and a woman in a jacket snapped, "Stick to films, Jimmy." The rift in the audience reflected broader cultural divides. Eastwood's defiance echoing his unforgiven grit, a lifetime spent calling out corruption. The crowd buzzed, some filming the confrontation. A man in a scarf murmured, "He owned the stage." What was meant to be a light-hearted Jimmy Kimmel live taping had morphed into a crucible of tension. Under the harsh stage lights, Kimmel attempted to regain control, pivoting toward the Oscar buzz surrounding Last Stand. "Clint's film is a masterpiece. Let's focus there," he said, voice cracking under pressure. But the effort faltered. Some audience members began to exit, while others chanted, "Bring Clint back." Behind the scenes, producers huddled anxiously, debating whether to scrap the segment. One muttered, "He's untouchable, but this is a mess." The crew reset the lights, bracing as the taping limped to a close. The stage lay in ruins, a shattered tableau of broken expectations. Outside, Eastwood faced reporters with steely calm. "I spoke my truth. Show's over," he declared, his resolve unyielding. For some, he was a defiant titan. For others, a reckless firebrand. The aftermath was seismic. Buzz around Last Stand soared, propelled by the clash. But Eastwood's legacy fractured, mythic to supporters, volatile to critics, echoing the steel of Dirty Harry. Post-taping, Kimmel confided. To his team, "I misjudged him. His fight's real. But that kind of fire burns hot." His candor hinted at regret. The relic insult had been the spark that ignited Eastwood's eruption. As the crowd dispersed, debates raged. A woman in a cap declared, "Clint crushed him. Pure grit." Another snapped, "He's too raw for TV." The clash would later be studied as a cultural fault line, conviction versus comedy, passion versus civility. Its truth was clear. Passion can torch decorum, but never without cost. This wasn't just a talk show derailment. It was a reckoning. Eastwood's stand, like the legal triumph in the provided script, exposed deep tensions in speech and legacy. His defiance became a spark for debate. Kimmel's misstep, like Robert's retreat, taught a hard lesson in the danger of challenging icons. The Jimmy Kimmel live clash proved that unleashed truth reshapes narratives. The crowd left divided, some awed by Eastwood's fire, others siding with Kimmel's wit. The confrontation's ripples would linger, redefining a legend who refused to bend, and a host who learned the high cost of provocation. So, what's your verdict? Did Eastwood's fire cement his myth, or was Kimmel's stage the wrong arena? Share your take, subscribe for more showdowns that shake the stage, and pass this on to someone who loves a fight. In a world of justice and resolve, the fiercest voice endures.